Morning, everyone. Good morning. Who are the kids here?
And you rested. And you
Okay. What are your names? Three of you.
My name is Uddhava.
Sure. Okay, good.
My name is Uddhava.
Your name?
Uddhava.
How old are each of you? That's getting old. And how old are you?
7.
How old are you?
11.
Okay. Let me ask you a difficult math question. So one of you is 9, one of you is 11, right? So when you were 1 year old, how old was he? Three, right? So he's 3 times older than you. Now, when you're 30, you'll be 27. So that means he's only 10% difference in age. So that means you're catching up. You're catching up to him. So my question is, when will you be equal in age? Because you went 3 times to only 10%. There's a division of math that figures that out. Does anybody know what the science of math is? Actually, invented by Isaac Newton. Calculus. Calculus actually answers that question. And it's something we have to use at the Bhakti Institute quite a bit. These matters. So these are one of the issues. I'm just teasing the kids. Okay. What's that?
This is their brother.
There's a brother. Oh, how old are you? And what's your name? Okay, can you answer that question? Catch up. What's your name? And where are you from?
From
Well, where you come from now? Yes, to say.
Alaska.
Alaska. Oh, did you hear?
From Boston.
Boston, we don't hold that against you. Too much. Okay, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Well, a little bit of a weak voice today. Yesterday, being Father's Day, my kids and grandkids insisted I meet them in Orlando. The place we're staying had these huge slides you go down, water slides. And so the two granddaughters each insisted we do doubles. I sit behind them and I have to scream as we go down the straight down chute. I should have. Anyway, they had a good time and I hardly can speak. So we go on. Okay. Let's proceed to chapter 11, 16, the Lord's opulence. This chapter has, let me see, I think we're doing verse, is it 1 to 8?
Yeah.
1 to 8, if I remember. Okay. We're not going to read all the verses and purports, but we'll begin. Somebody chant the first verse on this. Sanskrit.
Shri Uddhava Vacha. Shri Uddhava Vacha. Tam Brahma Paramam Saksha. Tam Brahma Paramam Saksha. Sarveshamapi Bhavana. Sarveshamapi Bhavana. Uddhava. Tam Brahma Paramam Saksha. Tam Brahma Paramam Saksha. Yantam Apavrita. Yantam Apavrita. Sarveshamapi Bhavana. Sarveshamapi Bhavana. Siddhyapya Yodhava. Siddhyapya Yodhava.
My dear Uddhava, Sri Uddhava said, my dear Lord, you are the beginningless and endless, the absolute truth himself, unlimited by anything else. You are the protector and life giver, the destruction and creation of all things that exist. On the next verse, my dear Lord, though it is difficult for the impious to understand that you are situated in all superior and inferior creations, those Brahmins who are actual knowers of the main conclusion worship you in truth. And read a little bit of the purport. The behavior of saintly persons is also be taken as evidence, and therefore it is here stated that although ignorant, impious persons are bewildered before the Lord's all-pervading feature. Those with purified consciousness worship the Lord as he is. So in this chapter, Sri Uddhava, what's he doing? He's inquiring about the Lord's opulences. And why is he doing that? That's going to become clear in a little bit. But let's just go on. Please tell me, Uddhava says, of the perfections the great sages achieve by worshiping you with devotion. Kindly explain which of your different forms they worship. Now, this sometimes gets very bewildering when people look at the pantheon that is India. We have Ganesh, Shiva, Brahma. Gee, you guys got a lot of gods. We only got one in the West. We have it together. You guys got so many gods. How many are there?
36 million.
Yeah, millions. And yeah, so you guys, what's wrong with you? I mean, isn't monotheism the way? And the answer is It is. There is one supreme person, but manifested in many ways. So the difference between the simplistic outlook and the complex outlook, Prabhupada uses this metaphor, is a difference between the abridged dictionary, which you can fit in your pocket, not much bigger than the phone, and the unabridged dictionary, which is at the University of Florida Library, 3 thick volumes. They both say what words mean, but there's a huge difference. So here, there are many aspects of God, many agents of God, many avatars. It's a complex world, still one supreme. So here, Uddhava is saying, can you sort this out for me, please? I'm getting a little confused. This is a very, very important point, and you'll see why in a moment. Oh my Lord, maintainer of all, although you are the super soul of the living entities, you remain hidden, thus being bewildered by you. The living entities cannot see you, although you are seeing them. Sometimes Prabhupada was asked, can you make God appear? The answer was very simple. It's not that. The real question is, can you act in such a way that God wants to see you? Can you act in that way? Can you behave in a way? It's not that God is your order character. Is there some way that you can act so God wants to see you? So next verse, O supremely potent Lord. Explain your innumerable potencies which you manifest on earth, in heaven, in hell, in all directions. I offer my humble obeisance at your lotus feet, your shelter in all holy places. And here at Uddhava, Prabhupada said, that was actually not Prabhupada, but Hridayanand Raj wrote this purport. I was with him when he wrote it. Uddhava here inquires about the Lord's material and spiritual potencies. Just as ordinary animals or insects living in human cities cannot appreciate the scientific, cultural, or military achievements of man, similarly foolish materials cannot appreciate the mighty opulences, personality of Godhead, even those manifest within our universe. So for the appreciation of ordinary beings, we would request the Lord to reveal exactly how and what form he expands his potencies. The supreme personality of Godhead, that's Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, well, best of those who know how to inquire on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna, desiring to fight with his rivals, asked me the same question that you are now posing. In other words, Uddhava is asking the same question Arjuna asked in the Gita. Lord Krishna was pleased that his two friends, Arjuna and Uddhava, had posed the same question regarding the opulence of the Supreme. On the battle of Kurukshetra, Arjuna thought that his killing his relatives would be an abominable, irreligious activity, motivated only by desire to acquire a kingdom. Arjuna, at the beginning of the Gita, argues, how can I fight? We're going to leave families unprotected. We're going to, even if I win, I have a kingdom in which I kill my relatives. I don't want that. I'm going to go off in the woods and just hang out. Have you ever felt that life didn't make sense to you and you just wanted to go off in the woods and hang out alone? Who here has felt that way? Yeah. Okay, most of us have. Most of us gone through a similar existential crisis. And those of you who say you haven't gone through it, you've also gone through it. We all do. Just there was a play in the 60s I saw, and it was called Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. It so resonated with me at that time. It was a very tumultuous time. with Vietnam War raging and the civil rights for such, I was, my parents had two favorite singers, Sammy Davis Jr. and Nat King Cole. Who has heard of these singers? What's in common among the two?
Wow.
They're black. And they both were headline performers at clubs in Las Vegas. They would be featured, big billboard, Sammy Davis Jr., Nat King Cole featured. These were people paying a lot of money. They're full every night. I mean, both of them, different voices, both incredibly controlled, beautiful voices, incredibly so. And they would go sing. And then they would have to eat in the area, the servants' areas. And they couldn't even stay in the hotel that had their name on the marquee. Why couldn't they stay there? They're black. They couldn't stay there. They had to go stay in a hotel on the edge of town. Finally, one day, Frank Sinatra, one of the most famous American singers ever, many of you have heard of him. And Christmas time, when you go to the mall, you'll hear his songs being played. He's all very good, famous singer. So he was one time also performing. He went to hear his friend Nat King Cole sing because he liked it so much. And he said, let's go have dinner. Nat King Cole says, where? I can't eat dinner at the restaurant I'm performing at, the hotel I'm performing at. They won't let me. They won't let me. So Frank Sinatra was one of the most famous people in the world that went to the hotel management and said, all of your staff is fired. And Frank Sinatra was also very tight with the mafia, very tight. So when he said, all of your staff is fired unless you serve him, they knew they were fired or they were going to be put 6 feet under cement or something bad was going to happen. So he went and ate dinner with his friend right in the lobby of the restaurant, the hotel, which is unheard of. So this was the 60s. This is what it was like then, and this was right before Prabhupada came to America. So it was a very existential time, a very confusing time, and I really just wanted to go to the woods and hide. What do you do? What's right? What's wrong? So you go try to fight it, protest and marches and this and that. But also sometimes just want to get away. What's the reality? What's the real truth? So these kind of, it really bothered me at that time. I mean, not claiming I knew you weren't this body, I sort of did. I sort of had a feeling about that. It bothered me that somebody whose body looked different than mine was so ill-treated. It was a real botheration. So when I was maybe 13, I saw Stop the World, I wanted to get off. I said, that's my play. So this is I'm trying to give the mood here, just from a personal experience. What's the mood? So that's the mood here. Something's wrong. I want to understand it. For Arjuna, it's much more dramatic than Uddhava. Uddhava was low-key. Arjuna's heavy dramatic scene. Imagine you're on a battlefield like the American Civil War, in which brother was literally fighting brother. You take states like Kentucky. Half the state was on the northern side and half was on the southern side. So half of some families believe the north, half the south. So you have brothers shooting at brothers on a battlefield, almost unheard of in the history of the world. So I think one of the best ways to understand Kurukshetra, the mood, the emotions of it, to understand the American Civil War, how nasty it was. So this is the mood here. So then Uddhava says, on the battle of Kurukshetra, although that killing his relatives be an abominable, irreligious activity motivated only by desire to acquire kingdom, he therefore desired He therefore desisted from the battle, thinking, I would be the killer of my relatives, that would be destroyed. Thus Arjuna was afflicted with mundane consciousness. So Lord Krishna here is telling, this is obviously after the battle of Kurukshetra takes place. So Lord Krishna is telling Uddhava, hey, Uddhava, remember what happened on the battlefield. You have that same mentality. Most of us, we also have that mentality. So what's going on? Arjuna and Uddhava have the same issue. And in the Bhagavatam, what do you do when you have an issue? This is what is being discussed here. So there is in the Bhagavatam 7:747 a translation. I won't read the whole translation, but the purport is very relevant. The living entity sees one type of body, by performing actions within that body creates another. Thus he transmigrates from one body to another through repeated birth and death because of his gross ignorance. The living entity's evolution through different types of bodies conducted automatically by the laws of nature in bodies other than those of human beings. In other words, by the laws of nature, we understand the constitutional position of the living entity, understand why he must accept the body. Now, so in the human form of life, one should not remain foolish and ignorant, but must inquire. That's the difference between us and animals. There are some animals, there's a bird, that I'm not exaggerating this. I've seen very reliable videos of this one parrot who has a vocabulary. Guess how many words the vocabulary knows in English? Only a lot. What's that? 3,000, that's exact number. You've seen the video. You were there Saturday. Yeah, actually Brenda Dunn showed me that original Bear project. Connie and I were at her house and she played that for us because she knows these people. So you have a vocabulary of 3,000 words. I mean, and this parrot has amazing abilities that we don't have. It can actually tell you what's going on in the next room. It's that deeper connection to whatever's going on. Yet the parrot does not understand. It's not this body. It's not capable of that understanding, though it has capabilities above and beyond even Shruti Sakar. You can imagine such capabilities. Imagine trying to run a house of 35 different people, new people coming in and out, all these amazing abilities. And this parrot can do things Shruti can't even do. The parrot cannot ask, who am I? Why am I here? That is generally reserved for humans, with some exceptions. Time allows, I'll tell you a story about an exception, see what time allows. So human psychology gives rise to many questions which various philosophers considered and answered with various types of philosophy based on mental concoction. That is not the way of liberation. The Vedic instructions say to solve the problems of life, one must accept a spiritual master. If one is actually serious inquiring about solution to material existence, one must approach a bona fide guru. Can somebody give me a Gita verse that says something like this? Yes, if somebody has to get a microphone and say it. You all know it. Somebody know it? Todd. Some pundit here. Give me a pundit, one pundit. We need microphone.
If you get a punch.
We need microphones.
Over here.
विधि विफल भाते ना परिप्रश्ने असे वैर उगदेक्षांति ते ज्ञान ज्ञाने
which means
try to understand the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth.
thank you. Key verse in Gita. One must approach a bona fide spiritual master by surrendering, pranipatena, and rendering service. A spiritual master can, and this is the essence of what we're talking about, answer such questions because he has seen the truth. Even in ordinary activities, we must consider gain and loss in an act. In other words, in every activity, we consider a gain or loss. If I do this, will this be a benefit or not benefit? We make that decision hundreds of times a day. Certainly, an intelligent person must consider the entire process of existence and then act intelligently, following directions for the bona fide guru. So, when I met Prabhupada, I accidentally stumbled upon that verse. I didn't know the verse. I read the Gita, but that verse, it was just one of many verses that didn't stick with me. But by accident, I approached the right way. Because when I met Prabhupada, I said, oh, I'm not going to challenge him. This seems like he has some credentials. Let me see if I can learn something. And I'll later on contemplate if I want it or not. I'm not going to challenge him. So I accidentally approached submissively. And then, I was quite accidental in my mind. And then I inquired and I rendered service because I was part of, I left my teaching assignment for a little while to do food relief for refugees from a war that had just finished in India, Pakistan. So a lot of refugees in the Mayapur area. So I was rendering service. Boy, I accidentally hit the formula. So then these things sometimes happen. So then I wrote Prabhupada when I got back to America. And he said something very interesting to me that's relevant to all of you. I'll read it. One makes his advancement in Krishna consciousness by voluntarily giving up his attachment to material nature. Such renunciation is called what? Let's say loudly.
Vairagya?
That's one word. Another one.
Something else?
Tapasya.
Oh.
Tapasya. That's it. We used to, my son, his name is Kirtan, his nickname was Tapa because he hated austerity. He was at the school, if there weren't hot showers, he figured out a way to get one anyway. He hated austerity. So we gave him Tapa for Tapasya. But we are not very willing to perform austerities without good reason. In other words, I mean, you're all doing certain austerities. You're eating food offered to Krishna, vegetarian food. Nobody here looks like they have red eyes because they were drinking too much last night. Okay, well, good. Wait, open your eyes wider. Okay. Then Prabhupada says, but if we're not willing to perform austerities without good reason, therefore any man with a good scientific and philosophical mind, like your good self, must first appreciate what transcendental knowledge is. If you get knowledge, automatically tapasya, austerity will follow, and then you make your advancement. So to get knowledge is the first item for anyone who's hoping to find the perfection of life. And again, Uddhava is asking knowledge. Arjuna is asking for knowledge. Explain it to me. Therefore, I advise you to read our books daily as far as possible and try to understand the subject matter. It's very important from different angles of the vision by discussing it frequently with the devotees. I was in New York at the New York Temple. In this way, you will gradually become convinced, and by your sincere attitude, you'll make progress. Yes, having some faith in me and in this Krishna conscious process is first and only requirement for wisdom. Because if we didn't have some faith that maybe I can get some wisdom, just even maybe, just hypothetically, you wouldn't listen in the first place. If there is faith, understanding will follow. It's not that faith without understanding. It's a little faith to listen. Understanding will follow. And as your understanding increases, so will your disgust with the spell of illusory energy. And when you voluntarily give up your entanglements, then the progress is assured. And then Prabhupada wrote me that our conversations in Mayapur were publishing in a book called Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. And that's this book. Has anybody, who's read this book? Who's not read this book? Okay, who's not heard of this book? Okay. It's an unusual event that happened to me. I ended up in Mayapur, the only guest at the first Mayapur festival. And I shared this story. And there were 60 or 70 very zealous devotees. So Prabhupada kept me, there was no buildings, it was just a hut for Prabhupada, a men's tent, a women's tent. They just bought the land. You couldn't buy anything. There was nothing there, nothing. We served out kitchery and there was a pump for water and a hole in the ground for you know what, and that was it. And so I was the only guest. So Prabhupada kept me with him all day to protect me from 60 or 70 zealous devotees. Just last week, I got mailed this book, and here it is. Yeah, this is the 61st edition of Perfect Questions in Chinese. So somehow or other, and I can assure you that the credit that goes to me is I happen to be at the right place at the right time. But Prabhupada was so masterful. And because I wasn't challenging him, he said, and because he wanted to protect me from the 60 or 70, 22-year-old zealots, he kept me with him, so I was very lucky. But the point Prabhupada was making to me was this: when you have doubts, ask some questions. It's healthy to have some doubts. That's what Arjuna happened. That's what Uddhava happened. If you have no doubts, you're not thinking. Now, it doesn't mean that I should walk up to each of you and say, let me try to find a doubt. You're just too Krishna conscious. But inside, each of us will have something that doesn't seem right. It doesn't jive. At times it'll come, I still have that. In the Bodhi half a century. Boy, I don't understand this word. I can't get this verse straight. This doesn't make any sense to me. And sometimes I don't have an answer. I have enough faith to be patient. But every time I follow the process, inquire submissively, approach the right people, think deeply, answers always come. So I'm trying to say to you, it's healthy. Prabhupada said something interesting about this. He said, if you come to Krishna on sentiment, meaning, I like this, Prashad, go dancing spot, you will leave on sentiment. If you come to Krishna with deep understanding, then you get deeper and deeper. You don't leave. So Prabhupada's point was try to understand. So at this point, I'm going to stop a little early today, was my plan. And see, does anybody have any difficult questions they want? Let me make this one point very clear. There is one dumb, really dumb question. It is so dumb, you can't imagine how dumb it is. That is the unasked question. That is really a dumb one, because it's just going to torture you. So there is no dumb question. Sometimes I ask Prabhupada, I'll be frank, some really dumb things. And Prabhupada just turned it around. The first time I met Prabhupada was before Mayapur. I'll tell you what happened. This helped me prepare to meet Prabhupada. I was in Calcutta, took an overnight train from the state of Bihar. Anybody who lives in Bihar knows why you leave the state. So, yes, to survive. So, went to Calcutta, heard Giri Swami speaking at Pandal for some sort of devotees. I went to the temple, and there was Prabhupada was there. Somebody invited me, why don't you go? So I sat in the room. Prabhupada said, come here, you have a question. And I just come from Bodh Gaya. Who's been to Bodh Gaya? It's in a beautiful, beautiful place in the Ganges River south of Patna. And there's a tree there. And that tree is considered to be a clone sapling of the original tree which the Buddha sat under when he got enlightened. So I naturally sat under the tree. And you know what happened? Absolutely nothing. But I did sit under it. You know, at least an apple could fall on my head, something, but nothing. And then, so shortly after that, I met Prabhupada. And I studied Buddhism in college, you know, read the 4 pillars of Buddhism. Read a book by this famous author. He was the most famous Buddhist author, Alan Watts. And, you know, we were all kind of into Buddhism in those days, in the 60s. It was a big rage. Later on, I found Alan Watts died of cirrhosis of the liver due to his drinking problem. And so, so I asked Prabhupada, well, you're doing this path, why not the Buddhist path? My first really dumb question. How do you think Prabhupada answered that? Yeah, speak up loudly.
What does Buddhism say? What's Buddhism say?
Yeah, Prabhupada answered it. I Gopal got it right in a very typical way. Prabhupada wasn't going to tell me what the Buddha said. He wasn't acting as a Buddhist. He wanted to know, what did I think the Buddha said? So, well, what does the Buddha say? Prabhupada didn't want to talk ism, Hinduism, Buddhism, this ism, that ism. He wanted to talk philosophy, always philosophy. One time Prabhupada said, we don't talk Krishna, talk philosophy. He wanted to be taught direct philosophy. So I said, well, there's a 4-fold this and an 8-fold that, or is it 8 of this and 4 of that? And I try to remember from my college textbook, and I just stuttering and mumbling and talking like an absolute idiot. Finally, I turned to him and said, I don't know. I can't remember. He said, well, then why are you asking? At that point, I shut up. And I just sat and listened. So I met Prabhupada later on, and he asked, you have any questions? I said, well, I remember what's stupid. So I tried to ask what was really important. So I was so glad that embarrassing incident happened with me, because it kind of prepared me. Now, I want to ask any of you, are there any real pressing questions you have? Now, one little paid advertisement. On Saturday, the BI put on a seminar, not a seminar, a presentation, a very short presentation by dear Kanjali. Who was there for that? Okay, so you know. Thanks to Chris, the technology worked beautifully. Thank you, Chris. Worked great. I was out of town, but I listened to the whole thing. Of course, it's a condensation of a 30-hour seminar down to 8 hours. And I think those who were there didn't find 1 minute of it boring. It's fast moving, it's exciting, it's interesting. I can't imagine speaking for 8 hours, but even harder is listening for 8 hours without 1 minute of boredom. It was so good. It discusses the scientific basis of Krishna consciousness. Any of you haven't seen it, any of us, Chris will give you the link. It's worth seeing. It's really, really good. And interestingly enough, he did what Prabhupada said to me. It was philosophy. He didn't actually mention Krishna once, though the end conclusion is, I want to know who Krishna is, because at the end you get up, there must be a supreme intelligent person. And anybody who really listens can ask, well, who is that? It has to be a person. But he left it as a cliffhanger. It was brilliant. He did like Prabhupada did, talk philosophy, not business. So now we will finally get to what I wanted to do. Does anybody have any questions that are really bugging you? And with our collective intelligence in this room, we're likely to be able to answer it. Something that really bothered you. Remember, there is no dumb question at this point, except the one not asked. Somebody has something, but this doesn't make sense to me. Yes.
So unfortunately, this is not a philosophical question, it's about philosophy. So like you mentioned earlier, it's a very pressing that we find a spiritual master. And by serving our spiritual master, we please Krishna. This is, how to become part of the Guru Parampara, and we honor the elders in our tradition because that's how it's carried down. So most of our gurus will most likely be disciples of Srila Prabhupada, or at least their gurus are disciples of Srila
Yes.
Prabhupada. And then Srila Prabhupada's guru, he was trying to please him. So why is it then that there is a lot of people that talk ill of Gaudiya Math, since that's in the Guru Parampara and it is the movement of Srila Prabhupada's guru?
Yeah, so why would people speak ill? Well, that's something that's bugged me for a long time. You just, well, I'll give you an example that might explain it. Why would two brothers hate each other? My brothers, we love each other, we speak all the time. Why in the same family would people hate each other? It's so weird, isn't it? You have the same parents, you grow up together, you have to live together. Why does that happen? It happens. It's the nature, sad nature of the world. So, first thing is, I actually avoid those internet discussions because internet discussions tend to be disgusting. They're not intellectual, they're not intelligent. They're just anybody who could be the biggest fool becomes an author and gets followers. In 2010, something happened, something terrible happened that caused, I've mentioned this before. There's a good study on this called, a book called The Cognition of the American Mind. And something happened in 2010 that changed America. And it caused a generation of students who started entering college around 2014 to be the most depressed, anxious generation ever. If you go to any college, University of Florida as an example, the mental health facility was overwhelmed to the point it would be months delayed to see a mental health counselor unless you were suicidal. Something happened in 2010, those who were in high school then, that caused, when they went to college, the highest anxiety and depressed generation ever. What happened in 2010?
Facebook.
What's that?
Instagram?
Close, not quite. You're very close.
Facebook.
Not quite. You're very, very close.
TikTok?
No, TikTok didn't exist.
The iPhone?
The iPhone came out,
Twitter.
and Facebook did something. They added something to the paradigm, the like button. And all of a sudden, people's position in society is determined by checkboxes, likes and dislikes. It was terrible. And that studies have been done, very good studies, showing that that caused a huge amount of anxiety. Your position in society is determined by somebody likes you or doesn't like you. I mean, everyone's gone through high school and, there's a bully and you have some social issues. But in 2010, it changed when we went on the internet. So the internet became a nasty, nasty place. And in Gaudiya Vaishnavas, unless we rise above it by cultivating our own spiritual life, we can be impacted by it. So why do Gaudiya Vaishnavas who are all on the same team sometimes slip and go at each other? Same reason why you have great people like Arjuna on the battlefield fighting his relatives. It's just the unfortunate nature of the world. And what is the one thing in the world that drives this? It's in one word that drives us. And this word is the reason, I'll give a good hint, why Krishna spoke to Arjuna. He said, I'm speaking to you because of this one word only. What is the word?
He's not envious.
Envy. Because Arjuna wasn't envious, Therefore, you can speak. People are envious, they want to criticize everybody. Now, some people that go to the Vaishnavas misbehave. How did in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's time they deal with a Vaishnava who misbehaved? The way they dealt with it was very interesting. Say a sannyasi, a monk, decided to have an affair. Not uncommon, by the way. I mean, not majority, but it happens. When it happens, they would take him out of circulation, put him in association with senior people, see what he needed to make his life work. And they would act compassionate, but never in the public domain. Because Krishna says in the Gita, for one who has been honored, dishonor is worse than death. Nowadays, there's no such thing. It used to be presidents of the United States are notorious for having affairs, going way back. Lyndon Johnson was president during the Vietnam War. After he died, his wife, Lady Bird Johnson, was interviewed. Now, he had a lot of affairs, but it was never in the newspaper. Newspapers knew that's private, we don't talk about it. Now, if they have an affair or not, every leader's accused of it. It's become weird. So one time, Lady Bird Johnson was being interviewed after her husband died. Well, you know, it is well known that her husband was having an affair, so how did that make you feel? She said, he was kind of a crude Texan. She said, well, thank God it was someone else's bed. That was her response. Shocking, but that was true. I mean, so.
I said she had a positive attitude about it.
Well, she did. Well, he was, kind of a crude kind of guy. He used to go sit on the toilet and call his vice president in to have discussions. He was just a crude guy. He's a good or bad president, it doesn't matter. But a crude guy. He was a crude Texan. If ever was a crude Texan. There were a lot of crude Texans. I've insulted any Texans you deserve. I mean, okay. So, so this is what happens. It's envy and the nature of the world. It shouldn't happen. I've been an ISKCON mediator for 20 years, so I had to mediate many of these major disputes, like with Narayan Maharaj and things like that. That's and I see what happens. And we can talk more about this privately, but it's a very nice question, and it just shouldn't be that way. But due to envy and lack of trust, this is what happens. And it was a lot more civilized before the internet allowed anybody to say anything. I know some of the most saintly people in this country. Some of the people who I just adore. I've known them for 50 years. I've lived with them. I know they're saintly. And I see garbage on the internet about them. One time, one devotee wrote, just in the 80s, wrote this very critical, he was a very envious devotee, who eventually left ISKCON, formed his own branch of Gaudiya Math, and it went on for 25 years until it turned out he was having affairs with at least, he was a sannyas, at least 12 of his disciples, at least a dozen came forward. And he had written that, that our temple here used to be on Depot Avenue. It's gone now. Very nice place. Used to be a frat house. Very good facility. And there was a GBC then who decided to sell it and put our effort into trying to develop a lecture. I won't mention that GBC's name, but Haridayanand Maharaj was not the GBC, but he was doing most of the initiations, initiating guru in the area. So this one person was envious of him, I won't mention that name either, wrote an essay that Haridayanand Maharaj sold Depot and took all the money and invested it in a palatial mansion. So he published this. And so I saw him at the theater in New York, and he's going around trying to walk up to ISKCON people, trying to convince them to leave ISKCON, with a big smile and the sannyas, outfit. So I walk up to him. I say, so and so, I know you well. I want to ask you about that. Sure. Big Cheshire, that smile. And I say to him, you know, you said this, but Freedom Ranch wasn't even GBC then. He had nothing to do with it. With that sale. In fact, he was out of the country during that whole time. And that money, he had nothing to do with that either. The money went elsewhere. And the palatial mansion was a double wide mobile home that Gajendra put down the down payment. And I made the payments on. I have the payment book. I can show you. So please publish a retraction. He says, it makes no difference. So I put my nose this far from his nose. And I said to his face, you are too envious to know the truth if it bit you. At that point, his whole face turned like Putna, who looked so beautiful, turned to this monstrous face. And I realized I had called him out for who he was, but I didn't do it publicly. I did it privately. So I don't believe in doing this, humiliating someone publicly. But when he was acting as a nonsense, I told him. Then later on, his real character came out. And there's a story of Get Become a Mouse. Who here knows that story? It's a good story. There was once, I'll tell the brief version. There was one sage, some mouse wanted to be a larger creature. So this sage would bless them, become this creature and that. Finally, I want to be king of the jungle, made of a lion. The lion then looked at the sage who had given him everything. His chops moving, he wanted to eat the sage. The sage goes, Una Mushika Baba, again become a mouse. So these people who criticize other Vaishnavas and do it, eventually it always happens. Again, they become a mouse. Because they lose their potency. But thanks for that question. And don't read the internet, it's so garbage.
Excellent comment.
Yes.
You mentioned you sat under that tree and nothing happened, but then you said right after you met Prabhupada.
Wow, why not? Something did happen.
I was
No,
like,
I never thought of that.
it's like the disconnect. I was like, the main thing happened.
Actually, Vainath is very, Vainath, you guys don't know, he was temple president of about 5 different temples. He made New Roman Reiki survive. He did so many things. You got a saint here. You guys don't know it now. But he's a good, very good comment. Now I can't use that example anymore. Nothing happened. All right. Well done, Vainath. Yes.
I was talking to a friend of mine, Michigan Sylvester, you know, my brother Sylvester's
Yeah,
son.
I know him.
He's a Narayana disciple. And he made a comment. He said, "Good boundaries make good neighbors." So
Good what's
good
that?
boundaries.
Oh, yeah. Good fences make good neighbors. Robert Frost.
So in the pantheon of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, there's so many groups, and you know, there's Bhaktisiddhanta, he had his disciples, and Prabhupada was established astrology became very common. And there was a point, when there were such good fences and hence offenses were made. And now people are definitely more mature. And so as long as there's cordial relationship and people aren't trying to take people away from ISKCON, and then they'll be cordial. But it's just it's good to keep that history in mind, because history does repeat itself. And what it will be is just a matter of time. If you're not cautious, there'll be people coming and criticizing ISKCON gurus, which they still do anyways. So we have to be cautious. And so you have to have good fences.
There's no Krishna today, right? So we know a few minutes over time. So there's something called Gaudiya Vikings. Now, what the Vikings from Scandinavia, they were famous for a mode of attack. They would not take over other countries. They would go attack settlements on the outskirts, because they were seafaring. So they go to the coast and attack, then retreat to the base, take whatever wealth they wanted. They made it to North America. Evidence is overwhelming way before Columbus did. So we have Gaudiya Vikings. These are people from the Gaudiya line who come and they attack the edges. They try to take people. So we do have Gaudiya Vikings. What do we do with Gaudiya Vikings? I have a lot of experience with this. First, any good center will draw rules. If you can do it, you're not welcome here. I mean, somebody comes to my house and then anybody comes, I give a sitting place, a glass of water, and the first thing they do is they go into my kitchen and load up all the silverware in their pockets. I'm not going to welcome them back to my house. You just don't do it. So if somebody is really just coming to attack, you got to draw some fences. But I do it, I try to do it in a non-aggressive way. I'll give you an example. I run the Bhaktivedanta Institute. Now the Institute had its ups and downs, and had some infight. And when we revived it within the last decade, I was asked to run it as one of the original members. I said, only on the condition that there's no infight. Because if there is, we can't work together. So I had two cases of one, a professor from UF, who's a devotee, and another PhD, who started coming to our meetings. And at the very first meeting, they would criticize every last thing we're doing without even knowing what we're doing. And my other PI member said, I don't want to come to these meetings anymore. We didn't have a house. We're just forming, trying to get our first conference going. And I don't want to come anymore. So what do I do in a case like that? Somehow I had this kind of envy that I criticized. There's one professor at UF, he actually lost his job, though he was a tenured professor, because he was doing the same thing in his own department. He had his own personal problems. His wife was leaving him, this and that, so he's taking it out on us. So what should I do in a case like that? There's a magic solution to it. And you all know the magic solution because you do it every single day. The magic solution to it. It's called Krishna lunch. So each of these, I said to each of these gentlemen, maybe go to Krishna lunch together. My treat. So we went to Krishna lunch. I fed them, sat down, and explained to them why they weren't welcome anymore. But I tried to do it very privately, no humiliation, and did it in a way that they understood it, accepted it. There's a saying, don't go away mad, just go away. So sometimes you see that in shops, they'll put that. So I wanted them to go away, but not angry. So that's how we need to do. We're not always so good at that. We're a very logical and passionate society. So we're not always good at that. I'm not always good at that, but I try. And that's the key. And those two devotees, by the way, one of them, his son has now joined the BI. So there was no hard feelings, but it was impossible to work with them. Because all they do is just, I mean, every morning when these two Prabhus would wake up, first thing they would do is take their ground spiel. Yeah, okay. Is there one more question we have? One more. Okay, with that, we'll end here, but let me remind you, if you have questions, you don't want to ask in front of a group, ask individually. Please ask your questions. They're important. If you don't do it, you'll be like Uddhava and Arjuna without Krishna. So you have to ask your questions and dig deep. Thank you very much. Enjoy your breakfast. Very good.
You can have this one. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Conversational problem. Oh, great. Thank you. Awesome.
Have you read the book? What's your name?
Stephen.
Stephen.
Oh,
Would you like one?
yeah, thank
You
you.
want Chinese?
Oh, yeah, I can read Chinese.